So then we go back to Collision, where Ricky Starks with Big Bill took on our friend and former boy Dax Harwood with Cash Wheeler. Why doesn't Cash can work his ass off? Can they not spread these jobs around? Do they have to beat Dax every goddamn week? Has he ever won a singles match?
Against Cash.
Has Cash? Yeah, that's right.
Against Cash.
And that's the only one Cash has had.
Yep.
So between the two of them, they can't whip anybody. So the House of Blech was in the arena watching the match, and I'm not talking about in the back, or I'm actually in the arena, up in the general admission section.
They weren't there until the lights went out.
Well, of course, the lights have to go out so they can appear and then come back on, but...
In the stands. I mean, it's one thing if they're coming out the entranceway, then you can at least make some sense. They're running by, the lighting guy knows what he's doing. They're in the stands. They're buying popcorn.
Yeah. And the thing is, these hot heels, this top heel group, not one fan heckling them, fucking with them, trying to speak to them. They're looking around them like, yeah, moving. You're blocking my view of the fucking ring. And they watched the match, and it was a good match because both these guys are professional in ways that most of the other people on the AEW roster are not. It wasn't a great match in that, again, by the time that it was over with, they were hitting each other just back and forth with things. Can anything beat anybody? And finally, one of the worst looking things was the finish. But before that, you had me go back and look at the exchange of pile drivers.
Right, because when we first talked about this before, a couple days ago, before time travel, you had seen the second pile driver, but you had fast forwarded, inadvertently past the first one.
Well, no, I didn't fast. I was making notes and I looked down. I didn't see, because I was noting as he goes to pick him up for the pile driver. I guess I looked down at my pad and I heard, boom, he pile drived this. So I wrote, he pile drives him. And then 15 seconds later, Starks is up and giving his own pile driver. But I didn't see the form of Dax's pile driver.
What'd you think now that you've seen it?
Well, in all honesty, I would have rather taken that way than the one Starks gave him. And I will tell you why.
Yeah, explain.
If anybody wants to go back and look at the finish of this match, after they've done all this other stuff, Dax goes to give Starks a pile driver, and he puts Starks' head between his legs, and he grabs him around the middle, and he picks him up. When he picked him up, it looked, and I'm thinking either they wanted to do this way or Dax saved it, one or the other. Because what it looked like was Starks didn't know once he went up, how to take the pile driver. And I can't believe nobody's ever pile driven him before, but instead of keeping his head between Dax's legs, his thighs, and his hands on Dax's knees where he could post up and brace up, he just let go of the legs and his head came out, and Dax had him picked up completely upside down where his head was hanging and his feet were straight up in the air. But his head and his arms were dangling free. And when Dax jumped up, if you go back and look, again, I'm trying to dissect this without knowing whether this was a save or on purpose. But what Dax did was when he jumped and he sat down, his legs were straight out underneath Starks' shoulders, and Starks tucked his chin so that basically, and threw his arms out to the side so that Starks' shoulders landed on Dax's thighs and knees, and Starks' head was not pointing straight down. His chin was tucked. So basically, Dax kind of power bombed him on his fucking legs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was a save, but I wouldn't advocate for trying that free-handed all the time because there's room for error.
It looked really bad. And I was surprised when they followed that up with another pile driver. That seems to be the thing in AEW. When you hurt someone with a pile driver, when it looks like you did, just do it again. Just do it again. Yeah, someone else do it.
But in this instance, the guy that got pile driven and it looked like it hurt him, 15 seconds later was up after the distraction and gives Dax a pile driver and beats him with it. And that pile driver looked worse because, and I'll talk about this. Some people can't give a pile driver. There's moves that even the greatest wrestler in the world can't do always, all the time. And there's two other people that did shitty pile drivers. And I'm going to tell you who they were. Bobby Eaton and Ric Flair. You didn't want either one of those fucking guys to pile drive you. And the reason with Flair, I think it came from the back injury and the way that he learned to take bumps at the side. But have you ever seen Flair give a leg drop?
A leg drop, not a leg drop. Knee drop. A leg drop.
Leg drop. Have you ever seen Flair leap up in the air and land flat on his ass?
I can't think of ever seeing that, no.
Okay, well, you got to do that, or at least go flat on your ass even if you're not jumping, to give a pile driver. And Flair didn't do that. He would bend a leg or bend both legs every time he gave a pile driver. And he only did it when it was part of the angle. It wasn't like he did them in regular matches. That's why you see him very seldom.
By the way, he was also awful at taking pile drivers.
Well, yes, because again, potentially, maybe it was at his neck, back, whatever the fuck. But with Bobby, think about this, the guy with the greatest leg drop off the top that would land flat, right? But this went back to the days when he was a single in Memphis, and we used to talk about it in the car. He said, Corny, I can't do it. Every time Bobby tried to give somebody a pile driver, he would not be able to keep both his legs straight and land flat on his ass. He would bend, trying to think in my mind's eye, he would bend his right leg and he would go over to the side. He is like the gymnast that they get their confidence shaken and they don't know where they are oriented in the air, whatever they call that in the gymnastics world. It's sometimes, if even a great athlete, if he can't see something in his head or it's not natural to him to move a certain way, he can't do that move. And so Bobby would only do a pile driver when it was called for in the finish or an angle or whatever. But that's what Starks did. He bent at least one, if not both of his legs, instead of going down flat, and was going to the side. And since he still had Dax's head between his thighs, that's more dangerous when the legs are bent and you're not sure how you're going to land and the guy is going to the side with your head in between his legs. Now, does that make sense to you?
It does.
Well, there you go. But the finish didn't. So...
Hey, by the way, whatever happened, didn't the Young Bucks win a tag title shot?
Well, yeah, but who wants to see the Young Bucks against Ricky Starks and Big Bill?
I'm not saying anyone does. I'm just talking about the actual booking. They won the tag title shot, and then FTR lost the belts, and now we haven't heard a word about the Young Bucks again.
Well, that's because they figured out what they wanted to do the next week. Anyway, it's not over because the lights went out. And then Julia Hart appeared in a spotlight wearing a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer nose.
Before you say that, earlier when the House of Black appeared in the stands, they said on commentary, either Shivani or Kevin Kelly, Julia's on the stage, but we never saw it. And then when they showed her again at this point later on, they kind of pretended like they never said that earlier.
Well, yeah, because they blew their surprise reveal. But why was she wearing a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer red nose? Was more prominent in my mind.
I don't know. I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice the big glowing fucking red glob on her nose when she's in the spotlight.
Now I can't tell if you're actually talking about a thing or if like she just had a pimple or something. No,
it was a big glowing red something on her nose, a light of some kind. I'm not even.
Do you have a fever, sir? It was a glowing red light.
No, I'm not even trying to rib you.
I'm going back to the video right now.
Well, while you do that, I'll move on. That once she was in the spotlight and had her nose red, then she made a gesture and turned the lights out, and then the lights came back on, and the House of Black were in the ring, and all the heels turned around to stare at FTR. But then more music played, and out came, I can't pronounce the name of their faction, LaFuckers and Goobers, with Preston Vance. And they're back from their murder spree in Mexico we saw on video a couple months ago. And then they got in the ring and faced off with FTR. And now it's looking like it's fucking 11 against 2. But then LaFuckers and Goobers turned around and attacked all the heels. And they had a big sloppy fight all over the ring and ringside area where the stray floor camera revealed half the arena was empty. And then the heels left. Have you got to...
Yeah, it's the light. Whatever lighting setup they had there, the red light, I guess, came through her hat and hit her nose.
Came through her hat? What, did they got a fucking scope, a sniper scope on her?
I don't know. It's kind of what it looked like. It was the reflection of the red light. And now here comes La Facción Ingobernable.
La Fuckers and Goobers.
The fact that Preston Vance was leading the charge really kind of took it a step down. It should have been Roosh, the first one.
But you were calling that a charge?
Well...
More like a purposeful walk.
This is horrible. Again, it's just faction warfare with factions no one cares about.